Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I'm going to be sharing my review of the Spelljammer Adventures in Space set for D&D 5th edition. This is a follow-up video to my Spelljammer Early Impressions video, so if you haven't seen that one yet, I do recommend checking it out. There will be a link you can click on at the end of the video. I will also try to remember to put a link in the description, but my memory for that stuff sucks, so if it's not there, please let me know and I can definitely take care of that. Before I get into the review itself, I just want to be clear for the record that this was an item that was sent to me by Wizards of the Coast for the purposes of doing this review video. However, they are not influencing the video or pre-screening it or telling me what to say in it. The opinions that I express in this video, as always, are 100% completely and totally my own. This is going to be, like I said, a follow-up to the early impressions video, so if you want to see me do a flip through or an overview of the items contained within the slipcase, check out that video. This is going to be just an audio form review. So Spelljammer Adventures in Space is the latest campaign setting product to come out for D&D 5th edition and is the first of the slipcase campaign setting products that Wizards of the Coast is releasing. They have mentioned that they want to do a couple of campaigns, different campaigns using this format, and I'll share my thoughts on the format and at the end, but overall you get 3 books, 364-page books, the Astral Adventurer's Guide, The Light of Xiarix, or something along those lines. There's lots of X's in there, so that's how I'm going to say it. I will probably change pronunciations throughout the video, so, it's a made-up word. We're just going to go with it. And we have Boo's Astral Menagerie, a 64-page book filled with new monsters for you to use while your characters are traveling through the astral sea. So just to get right to my opinion here, I personally really like this set. I use planar travel a lot in my campaigns, especially in the last couple of years. It's never really something that I intentionally set out to do, but when some new shiny setting comes out that catches my attention, sometimes I just want to dive into it, and the players may travel through a planar rift, or maybe sent there via magical ritual, or stepping through a mystical gateway, but now I can actually utilize these Spelljammers. Now, this product is not necessarily a full-on setting in of itself, so that's something that is definitely a point of contention that I've seen people discussing. Personally, I have no issue with it. I have all the officially released D&D 5e settings, and I am really desperate to get a more logical way to be able to connect them. So the core concept behind this is that each of the campaign worlds exists within their own spell system or star system, and the characters can travel from one to another through the Spelljammer ships as they travel through space, or as they call it, the astral sea. It also takes advantage of the planar information shared in the Dungeon Master's Guide. So if you have, obviously, hopefully you have the Dungeon Master's Guide if you're running a 5e campaign, but if you have it, then you can use the information in there to provide you with a few other locations to get to travel to. Unfortunately, like I said, there's not a whole slew of different worlds or stuff like that. It would have been really cool to have a planet generator, a world generator sort of thing that you can use, but I will be doing a video in the future, near future, detailing some items or showcasing some items that you can use from either other RPGs or other editions of D&D to help flesh out your Spelljammer campaign. We tend to have collections of books, so something that allows you to utilize more of them all at the same time is something that I like. But again, it's not going to be to everybody's taste. The Astral Adventurer's Guide does dedicate a lot of its page count to the Spelljammers itself, their operation, the different tasks that you can do while on board, ship-based combat, and deck plans for a slew of different ships from a myriad of different races that travel the stars. There are some new player options included as well. There you have a half a dozen or so player character races, including things like the Astral Elf, the Gif, which is a hippo race of humanoids that are huge fans of gunslinging, and my favorite race has to be the Plasmoids, the sentient space amoebas that can either exist as a blob form or can split them so their bodies in such a way that it creates legs and arms so they can wear armor, utilize weapons and tools. I love the concept. It's one of my favorite things that D&D 5th edition has shown to me since it's released. And they plasmoids were part of the original 2nd edition AD&D Spelljammer, but I don't believe they were a playable race at that point. I think they were sort of just a collection of different types of plasmoids, which would be used as like various monsters for you to encounter. But here we get them as an actual playable race, and like I said, they're one of my favorite things in all of 5th edition so far. The Light of Xeriax, again, I'm going to say that differently every single time, is a 64-page module that takes players from levels 5 through level 8. It starts off on the material plane, the material world, whatever campaign setting you're using, be it an officially released one or one of your own design, before the world is disrupted with these giant crystalline vines bursting through the ground all across the world. The characters flee on what they think is a sailing ship, but turns out to be a spelljammer. After that, they travel the stars, going to different locations such as the Rock of Brawl, or a warm, welcoming, inviting place known as Doom Space, in order to get to the bottom of what's causing these crystalline vines to sprout and hopefully find a way to stop them. I'm not going to spoil the adventure here. This is a new product and people are still likely in the early stages of this campaign, so I'm not going to go into details here. I may do a more in-depth review of the adventure itself down the road, but I will just say that I think the adventure is a really good way of introducing your characters to the concepts of Spelljammer, and it's one that personally I would like to run, even if it means adjusting upwards to make it for higher level characters. I'm totally fine doing that. And then you get Boo's Astral Menagerie, a 64-page book featuring all kinds of different creatures, cosmic horrors, Neogi, and of course your giant space hamsters. So this is a really good product as far as I'm concerned. It's something that appeals to me personally and the types of games that I run or would like to run. So this is something that I'm going to use quite a bit. My current 5th edition D&D campaign had the character starting in the Nentir Vale, which is part of the world of Narath, which was in of itself the default setting for D&D 4th edition before Rime of the Frost Maiden came out, and I wanted to run that campaign, but was just admittedly too lazy to convert it to the Nentir Vale, so I just had the players travel through a planar rift, which deposited them in Icewind Dale. But instead of doing that now, I can actually have them take a Spelljammer back to Narath and have some things maybe take place in between. Maybe have them stop at Ravnica or Eberron or any other of the officially released campaign settings, or even some of the older D&D campaign settings that I just kind of want to dust off my shelf. So that's the really strong appeal for me, is a way to be able to sprinkle in those other campaign settings without having to dedicate full campaigns or full-length long-term stories to them. Just be able to dip your toes in, and if the players like the setting, then maybe do something a bit more substantial there later on. Like I said, I wish there was more in terms of just some random planets that the characters could explore. There are some locations in the adventure that you can go through, but it would have been nice to have had, again, something else that you could have used just to create your own things quickly. But as I said, I will do a video in the future with a suggestion on how something you can pick up that will let you do that pretty easily. So there are workarounds for sure. The 64-page 3-book format is okay. Some people are pretty upset with the page count. I don't necessarily mind it. It's still about 190 some odd pages when you add all three of them together. So it is a more comprehensive product than, say, the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. And you do get the DM screen included, which is a pretty solid DM screen that does not include conditions anywhere. So points for that. That said, like I said, there are obviously going to be room for improvement. I would have preferred to see, and I hope that if they do this again, this type of format, I really do hope they go with 3 100-page books over the 3 64-page books. That way you get a few more pages that you can dedicate to locations for your characters to explore, or some more NPCs for them to be able to interact with. You do get some NPCs in the Rock of Brawl section, but it would have been nice to have had just a little bit more. We're always going to want more information, so even if it was, you know, a 300-page book, I'm sure there's things that you would still want to be included that just didn't make the cut. So there's always going to be stuff like that. But I think 3 100-page books would be the way to go going forward, even if that means dropping the DM screen. I think that's fine, just to have that little bit of extra information. The playable races are really cool, but other than that, there's really not a ton of player character options. There are the backgrounds, but they do lack the personality trait charts. That was my favorite part of the backgrounds in the player's handbook, was actually rolling on those charts to try to develop my character's backstory. Unfortunately, those charts are now missing from the game. So that's something, again, that would have been nice if they had more page count. Then maybe that's something that could have survived the cut. Because like I said, that was my favorite part of backgrounds as a whole. There are also only 2 spells, one which creates an air pocket for yourself to breathe in, and the other creates or is used in the creation of a Spelljammer helm, a magic item which is a throne that a character with spellcasting capability sits on. I think it has to be specifically a wizard or arcane spellcaster, but they sit on it and they attune to it, and they can use the power of their mind to navigate the ships through space. A cool concept for sure, but again, it would have been nice to have seen a few more new spells being added to the mix. Even if they didn't have like a strong planar theme to them, just to have a few new spells would have been really nice. As far as magic items go, there's also only 3 of those. The previously mentioned Spelljammer helm. You also get a apparatus for navigating when you get into a spell system. So it allows you to track the location of asteroids, comets, planets, and stars. And then the third item is kind of like a spacesuit or diving suit kind of concept that just, again, allows you to travel through space without having to worry about air. It gives you a fly speed if you're in 0 gravity, so you can maneuver perfectly, and it gives you a swim speed if you use it underwater. So overall, it's sort of a multi-purpose thing. But that's kind of it for player character options. So it would have been cool to see a couple of new class archetypes. Maybe even some sort of new class. We've only had 1 new class introduced in 5th edition since its release, so saying that a new class would have been nice is probably a stretch, but having some new like class archetype options would have been really cool, or even just a single alternate class feature that you could sub into an existing character class that might be more along the lines of what you would need for traveling through space. So there's obviously room for improvement, and if depending on what you were looking for, this may not be the product for you. It is going to have a much more limited niche appeal. Several of the recent 5th edition products have been more sort of niche concepts, but I like that. I would prefer that they try more, concepts that may not have the mass appeal, rather than constantly focusing on things that might be a bit more homogenized and kind of watered down. So I like what we have here. It would just, again, it would have been nice to have had more. But as a means of connecting your pre-existing campaign settings, this is fantastic. It also works really well with the Radiant Citadel adventure, because that also has a large collection of just random locations that you can use. And the Radiant Citadel itself could just be another location like the Rock of Brawl that you could stop at before traveling to some of these other worlds. So instead of relying on, again, teleportation magic, they may learn of something going on and go from the Radiant Citadel using a Spelljammer to reach the spell system that world is in and complete the little mini adventure there. So it's connected to a lot of the more recently released stuff, and that's good, but to get the most out of this product, you really do kind of need to rely on having a larger collection of campaign settings, either officially released or your own homebrew worlds. So if that's not your thing, then I totally understand that you may not necessarily be as enthusiastic about this as I am. But for me, I'm going to get a lot of use out of this because I wanted something to a vehicle, pun intended, to be able to connect my campaign settings together in a way that's more exciting than stepping through a planar rift. So I'm going to get a lot of use out of this personally. So as far as my personal review goes, this is a pretty decent product overall, which serves a purpose that I wanted it to serve for my campaigns. But it is a little bit lacking, and there is obviously going to be room for improvement. It would be nice to get a supplementary product to sort of go along with this. Maybe something like a manual of the planes or a planar handbook. You could probably call it like, I don't, just come up with like Elminster or Mordekainen or Melf or Tensor, just somebody, that can put out a guidebook with some locations to explore. That would be really, really cool. I don't think we're going to see that just because we're sort of nearing the end of 5th edition as it is now. But it would be really great if they could do something along those lines. So yeah, a solid product with a very sort of niche appeal to it. If it's the sort of thing you want to add to your game, add some more science fantasy elements, it's a really good way to start. And I will do a video in the very near future with some products you can pick up that will hopefully be useful in enhancing your spell jamming as you are traveling from star to star, from spell system to spell system across the astral sea. So let me know in the comments below, have you picked up Spelljammer Adventures in Space? Have you been running or playing in the adventure, and what are your thoughts on it so far? Once again, thank you very much to Wizards of the Coast for sending this to me. I really do appreciate it. And thank you to each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to watch this video. It really does mean a lot to me. And as I said, if you want to see me flip through, a comprehensive flip through of the Astral Adventures Guide and Boo's Astral Menagerie, as well as a detailed overview of the DM screen, check out the link that should be appearing very shortly, if it's not already on the screen, for my Spelljammer Early Impressions video. Thank you once again from the bottom of my heart, and I will see you all next time. Until then, take care.